Hey, welcome back to the stash. Marvel did it! They finally managed to replace Mary Jane, but is anyone so surprised that the issue they do so is yet another mess? I don't think so. Obviously, Spider-Man's love life has mostly been complicated and at times downright depressing, but somehow Zip Wells and all those in the Spidey office have managed to make things even worse when it comes to that part of Peter's life. So join us today as we go over the latest installment of this horrible series, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 55. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly let you all know that we are trying to reach 3,000 subscribers before the end of the month. The support recently has been insane, and I want to thank you all for it because it really does mean the world. So if you are new around here and you like Spidey or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But anyway, with all that being said, let's get straight back into the video. So in case you've missed the previous uploads, lucky for you there is a playlist, I'll go over a short recap. The sins of the Green Goblin have been destroyed once and for all. Now Peter Parker can take a well-deserved break to focus on his personal life. That includes taking new potential flame, SHAY Marken, on a proper, uninterrupted date. Now while there have been some sparks between Peter and the Ravencroft nurse, his attempts to get closer have been ruined by Spider-Man's business. So our story begins with Spidey rushing his way to his date with Shay. In typical Parker-like fashion, a supervillain interrupted him on his journey. Lucky for Pete though that it wasn't anyone big time because then he'd be certain to miss it. Upon arriving, he opens up his web bag to get changed, but much to his own disappointment, he somehow forgot his shoes after dealing with the new stilt man. Surprisingly, Shay is still there waiting for him, even if this is the third time in a row he's been horribly late for their date. Of course, she notices him wearing no shoes, but his troubles don't stop there. The date rightfully and quickly becomes more or less an interrogation about Peter's true intentions and his reasons for always being late. It especially doesn't help when he has a mysterious black eye. Shay thinks Peter's trouble. The I got a secret family type of trouble. Peter assures her that he's got his hands full letting down one family, let alone two. He tells her, I'm going to tell you the truth. I can't tell you. Which somehow works. She accepts the answer but then changes her question from how to why. Peter begins his whole responsibility speech explaining how much he cares for other people's well-being. Shay also makes the point that, sometimes you can have too much responsibility, as well as you need to take the necessary amount of time for yourself and your own needs. Now because Peter in this series is borderline brain dead, he ponders what that would even look like. Shay uses the example of having a date with someone you like and find attractive, and by making time for it and taking the date really seriously, that's taking care of yourself. Peter counters with, what if the other things feel too important? Like, I wouldn't be taking care of myself if I wasn't taking the responsibility for everyone. Shay finally concedes. She tells him it's fine for him to do that, but just don't pretend you want whatever this is. She continues by telling him the sacrifices that she made to be here on time tonight. She started an hour early at Ravencroft and did all her night work within her shift, also she could be there. Because if she thinks someone's special, she wants to show them that. She wants to act like it, but most importantly, she takes it seriously because it's her responsibility to herself and whatever this is. Peter reaches for her hand and reassures her that, I want this. I want to be here. The two share a brief moment until something captures Peter's attention. The Parker luck strikes once again. Outside the restaurant, Rhino and Screwball are causing havoc among the streets of New York City. Peter knows what he must do. He says he has to go. Shay lets him know though, she can't do this anymore, that this is the final straw. He understands and he runs out the restaurant, leaving Shay to wallow by her lonesome self, also he can get changed into his costume. But this time, he stops himself. This time he does something he's never done before. He interrupts Screwball and Rhino destroying New York, not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Of course the two take him as a joke. I mean, to them he's just a normal guy, so they agree to kill him until he pleads with them to stop because he's on a date. He explains the whole situation, from how he messed up twice already with her, how this is his last chance to impress her, or else, she walks away, how he really does like her. He even feels like he can be himself when he's with Shay. But most importantly, he tells Screwball and Rhino how right now they are doing the very opposite of helping him. So he begs them, just for one night, can they please knock it off? Much to my and Peter's surprise, Screwball says that she totally understands how the dating life can be so hard, so they both agree to leave, and as they do, Screwball helps the Rhino set up an online profile. Back at the restaurant, we see Shay with much sadness look through the menu until a certain Peter Parker rushes back through. Shay's face instantly lights up. Our story ends with Peter telling her how he really feels, how he wants this so badly, and then the two share a kiss. Peter sits back in his chair and the two are finally able to continue their date. It even turns out Screwball and Rhino decide to watch them across from the other rooftop as they finish setting up his dating profile. Now, once again, I found myself seriously questioning if this comic is actually, at the very least, 20 pages long, because I finished this entire story within a solid 5 to 10 minutes. There's something so shallow when it comes to these modern Spidey comics, and I think it's not talked about as often as it should be. Obviously, these are low quality books, that's the common knowledge part about this series, but it affects so many aspects besides just the story. It's a bad sign when something takes half to even less the amount of time it should take to get through, or because there's no effort being put in. Zeb Wells clearly doesn't care for character building at all. Like, there's no more inner thoughts to go along with the characters anymore. Inner thoughts were such a staple for comics, and it added so much to classic stories like Kraven's Last Hunt, or even David Mack's Echo Saga, where the inner monologue was used for the three main characters in such a good way that only enhanced the overall story and experience for us, the readers. Now, I'm not saying that every issue has to be some sort of massive plot that's on the level of those stories, but all I want is what used to be the standard amount of effort writers used to put in their books. It's a comic book, not a f***ing picture book.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Speaking of no effort though, this is yet another Spider-Man comic that fails to make note of any other series going on at the same time, the most obvious one missing being Venom War. Is it that hard for the Spidey office to try to have a form of continuity? Seriously, how is that aspect of the book so lost right now in this current state? It's happening in every title and each time it just severely bothers me. Now onto the story. Oh god, the story. In short, this is a simple but obviously misguided issue that is trying to give Peter a win, but like most of the rest of Zeb Wells' run, it hasn't actually done the work necessary to make it successful. The bulk of this issue is just a date between Peter and Shay, and the large majority of that is just her pointing out that he hasn't really treated her all that well on the 3 dates they've tried to have. Of course, in typical Parker-like style, Peter gets pulled away from his date, but this time, he just walks up to the supervillains, in particular Screwball and Rhino, as Peter and asks for them to stop and leave, which they do for some reason. I mean, if you were going to pick 2 villains to do that, they might make the most sense, but still. Wow. But before I get into my main issue with this, I wanted to take a second to just acknowledge another fallen soldier in battle. Yes, Zeb Wells' character assassinations clearly knows no bounds as he adds the Rhino to his massive list of victims. Over the years, the Rhino has really become, in my own opinion, one of the very best Spider-Man characters, especially part of his rogues gallery. His growth was something I loved within his stories, especially how he found and unfortunately lost the love of his life. It led to some beautiful scenes between Spidey and the Rhino. He really became one of the most human characters within the series, but of course, all that is thrown completely out the window, just like Zeb did with Mysterio, and here he's doing crime for fun, I guess? Is Zeb Wells seriously this allergic to actually putting in a slither of effort when it comes to writing all these wonderful characters properly? But anyway, back to my main issue with this part of the story. If I'm being honest, if it was another superhero whose whole thing wasn't built off their huge sense of responsibility, then I wouldn't have, had that much of a problem with it in the first place. But this is Spider-Man, for God's sake. In case you forgot, because Zeb Wells clearly has, Peter's whole origin is about him letting someone get away because he ignored the responsibility that came with his great powers. Later, of course, that same person who escaped then murdered his uncle, ever since he's lived with his whole life, making sure to honor his uncle and to never make that same mistake again, especially for a selfish reason. So it feels really conflicting and wrong for him to just let the Rhino and Screwball walk away, all because he's scared the pretty lady is gonna ditch him. To make it worse, he's not even stopping them for their own benefit either, he's simply doing it for his own gain, which is just another reason as to why this part of the story just sucks. Plus, he can't even ensure that they're not even going to go and just commit crimes elsewhere.
You had one job. Just the one.
And what certain defenders of this book failed to just comprehend, that this on a fundamental level simply breaks the core of the character. Even during the good old days when him and MJ were married, he still did the right thing. He still missed their dates and even showed up on multiple occasions late because he had to go and stop crime as Spider-Man. The difference is that they worked around him being Spidey. Here, however, Peter works Spider-Man to fit within the interests of Peter Parker. Mind you as well, if you really want to go that far back, college Peter managed to juggle relationships and a superhero life in stride. These moronic writers have somehow warped Peter's character so much, it's honestly really difficult to not only recognize him, but to see anything cool or likable about him.
What's the point?
So as you saw in the video, he goes back to the date and confesses about how he wants her as well as wanting to kiss her, which she somehow agrees to. Now, the thing I don't understand is why? Why? Even this issue points out, Peter hasn't gotten through one date with her without unexpectedly leaving with a shitty excuse. It doesn't feel real at all. Why would she actually care so much about him and put up with him so much? He's not even the one who asked her out. Aunt Anna tricked him into dating her. This is what I mean by saying Zeb Wells doesn't put in the work. There's no reason Shay should even care this much about Peter. In fact, there's no reason for us, the reader, to even care about Shay and her relationship with him. This entire volume has been a complete embarrassment in comparison to prior runs. One of the best parts about Spidey comics was his personal life and the cast of characters within it. Each felt really fleshed out and everything felt like it happened for a reason. Here though, there's none of that. Zeb Wells was too busy writing that annoying Goblin story for the third time in the space of 54 issues and barely focused a single page in relation to Peter's personal life. Shay could have been a half-decent love interest if the writer actually cared about her. It's clear that they just shoehorned her into the story as a divider between Peter and MJ. It leaves Shay as a character feeling so hollow inside because no one in the Spidey office wants to genuinely try to make a realistic and heartfelt story, especially with her a part of it. I mean, looking back, I can barely remember her when I go over the previous issues, and now I'm supposed to believe that they've somehow built a strong enough connection to pretty much be dating?
Right.
There's simply no reason to feel good about them getting together. It's a relationship that only exists because they butchered and severely hate Mary Jane. If we've learned anything from the previous relationships since Brand New Day, it's obvious they'll be together for a few months until the eventual breakup, and then he'll be back with MJ for a little bit until they split up, and then he'll crawl back to Black Cat, then repeat and repeat, because these morons haven't got a single clue with what they're actually doing. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here any support means so much. I'd love to know what you thought of this issue down below in the comments section, especially about Shay and now her pretty much being his new girlfriend. We can start a conversation. Be sure to tune in next time, same web time, same web channel. Thank you guys again for watching and see you in the next one.